Japan tells South Korea the specific products subject to its export curbs and restrictions. This comes less than a week after Japan's cabinet approved the move, sparking anger, protests and boycotts in South Korea. U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton signals Washington isn't overly concerned by North Korea's recent firing of short-range missiles. However, he says President Trump draws the line at ICBM launches. Plus, President Trump hints he will continue to turn the screws on Beijing, just a day after the U.S. Treasury Department designated China a currency manipulator for the first time since the mid-1990s. So today is the day we are going to find out how much damage Japan's trade curbs will have on South Korean companies, or at least a far better idea than we do now. Japan's government has published its detailed regulations for its enforcement of export regulations. We have our Hongyu on the line to give us the details. So what do we know about this list that we hear was put out by Tokyo just around an hour ago?
Well, Mark, Japan's detailed regulation for the enforcement of export regulations includes its decision last Friday to exclude South Korea from the so-called white list of preferential trading partners. They have listed what items out of the 1,100 strategic materials will need separate approval to be exported to South Korea. Since the regulations have just come out, we are still skimming through it. We should have more specific details soon, but it's a long and complicated list of items and products. Items subject to separate approval go through a piquet process of export approval for 90 days by Japan's Trade Ministry. Countries that remain on Japan's whitelist benefit from a simplified inspection process for 857 items out of the 1,100 classified as less sensitive by Tokyo. In addition, Japanese exporters do not need separate approval if they undergo screening every 3 years. But even for countries not on the white list, some items get special general comprehensive authorization so they can benefit from a screening exemption. Special General Comprehensive Authorization is given to Japanese companies selected by the Japanese government for their approved export management. Currently, China, Taiwan, and Singapore are the only non-whitelist countries in the world that benefit from that system. I will be back with more updates in our later newscast, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. Hopefully we'll get some more specific information coming out by the time of our next newscast at noon. Now, South Korea's finance minister has vowed to take preemptive steps to stabilize South Korea's financial and foreign exchange markets amid all this turmoil we're seeing. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi was at an urgent meeting with Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol and other senior finance officials on Wednesday to discuss Tokyo's export curbs and the U.S. decision to label China a currency manipulator. Hong said the increased volatility was the result of short-term risks that happened to overlap and insisted he will cope with such issues as swiftly and sternly as possible. On top of around-the-clock monitoring, the minister also vowed to take measures to stabilize financial markets. Now, the Asia-Pacific region faces security risks as the rising tension between South Korea and Japan is threatening trilateral security cooperation with the United States. This is according to the latest report by the U.S. Congressional Research Service. It says 4 events, including South Korea's termination of an agreement over wartime sexual slavery and Japan's export curbs against South Korea, have caused Seoul-Tokyo ties to deteriorate, making trilateral security cooperation more complicated. It also anticipated another possible setback, mentioning Seoul's threat to end a military information sharing agreement with Japan. Now, responding to North Korea's firing of more short-range ballistic missiles on Tuesday, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton has revealed North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump have an understanding that the North is not going to launch longer-range ICBMs. Now, Bolton added that President Trump is closely monitoring everything that's going on here on the Korean Peninsula. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
On Tuesday, North Korea conducted its fourth round of missile tests since July 25th. Speaking to Fox News on Tuesday following the regime's latest launches, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton said Pyongyang appears to have conducted a series of missile tests in recent weeks to get a new weapon fully operational, adding that the projectiles appear to be ballistic missiles. Seoul has also concluded the projectiles were short-range ballistic missiles, which North Korea is banned from testing under UN Security Council resolutions. However, the North disputes those assessments, claiming it's testing a new rocket launch system. The Trump administration has downplayed North Korea's missile launches over the past few weeks, saying they were merely short-range missiles. On Tuesday, Bolton said Trump and Kim Jong-un have an understanding the North Korean leader is not going to launch longer-range intercontinental range ballistic missiles, adding that President Trump is watching the situation very carefully. The launches came as North Korea denounced joint military exercises between South Korea and the U.S. that began on Monday. However, Bolton dismissed the regime's protests, saying the drills are command post exercises that are largely computer simulations. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton also says Washington's willingness to deploy missiles in Asia is about protecting its allies in South Korea and Japan, saying any deployment would be purely defensive in nature. Bolton's comments on Tuesday came in response to China's protests against U.S. plans to consider deploying conventional intermediate-range missiles throughout Asia. Beijing threatened Washington with countermeasures if the U.S. deploys missiles on China's doorstep. The recent exchange of heated rhetoric between the two countries has raised concerns about a regional arms race. And North Korea has revealed it test-fired its new tactical guided missiles on Tuesday morning and did so under the guidance of its leader, Kim Jong-un. The state-run Korean Central News Agency said Wednesday that the firing was a warning against the joint military drills underway between South Korea and the U.S. It also said 2 tactical guided missiles were launched from the western area of the country and precisely hit the targeted islet in the East Sea, confirming the credibility, capability and safety of the missiles. Now, in other news, US President Donald Trump has hinted he will continue to turn the financial screws on Beijing just a day after the US government took the rare step of designating China a currency manipulator. Trump's economic advisor also stressed the US has an upper hand in the trade negotiations, pointing out that China's economy just isn't what it was 20 years ago. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
Following Washington's designation of China as a currency manipulator, President Trump is continuing to keep the squeeze on Beijing. Trump tweeted Tuesday that his administration has done what no previous U.S. administrations have done, stood firmly beside American farmers. He added he'll do so again next year if needed to ensure China is not able to hurt them. Watchers are viewing the tweets as a sign Trump will maintain his current stance if Washington cannot conclude a satisfactory trade deal with Beijing. Trump has already announced he will levy an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports worth $300 billion from September 1st. Trump's top economic advisor Larry Kudlow emphasized Tuesday that the U.S. holds the upper hand in trade negotiations with Beijing, claiming the Chinese economy is now crumbling. In an interview with CNBC, the director of the White House National Economic Council also stressed Washington's determination to hold further trade talks with China. Explaining Washington is preparing to hold trade negotiations with Beijing in the U.S. next month, he also hinted there could be changes to the tariffs imposed against China. This comes as U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton warned Beijing would face consequences if it does not halt all its wrong actions, which include currency manipulation and the theft of American intellectual property rights. Speaking to Fox News on Tuesday, Bolton also stated that Washington will go to the International Monetary Fund if Beijing continues to tinker with its currency. Kim Hye-san, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, China's central bank, as you'd imagine, released a statement on Tuesday responding to what the US has done, and it condemned Washington's decision to announce that it is a currency manipulator. Its state-run media called the Trump administration's decision politically motivated and nothing more than a bluff. Kim Mok-yeon reports.
A day after the U.S. announced it was officially designating China a currency manipulator, the People's Bank of China released a statement denouncing the move. The PBOC expressed deep regret, calling the decision a unilateral act based on protectionist principles that seriously undermines international rules. It said the move will hurt the global economy and reiterated that the designation doesn't even meet Washington's own standards of a currency manipulator. In an editorial Tuesday, China's state-run daily tabloid Huanqiu Sibao called the decision a bluff, claiming China won't be hurt much. It said that if it happened 2 years ago, it might cause concern that Washington would increase tariffs on Chinese goods, but since the Trump administration has enacted hefty tariffs already, the designation does not mean a lot. It also said the U.S. is throwing a tantrum, claiming that China meets only one of the 3 criteria for a currency manipulator, which is that of having a significant trade surplus with the United States. The 2 other criteria set by the U.S. in its law from 2015 are having a material global current account surplus and engaging in persistent one-way intervention in foreign exchange rates. But the label announced on Monday was based on an older law, namely the Omnibus Foreign Trade and Competitiveness Act of 1988, that sets a looser standard for naming currency manipulators. Normally, if a country is found to be manipulating its currency for a trade advantage, the U.S. Treasury is required by law to enter bilateral negotiations with that country or work through the International Monetary Fund to correct the situation. If no solutions can be found, the president can impose various penalties, such as banning the U.S. government from sending development funds to that country or excluding it from U.S. government procurement contracts. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
After 9 straight and increasingly chaotic weeks of anti-government protests in Hong Kong, the mainland Chinese government seems to have run out of patience, issuing a stern warning to the protesters there. Beijing has urged them, among other things, to not mistake China's restraint for weakness. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Dami. So Dami, tell us more about what really sounds like an ominous warning from China.
Mark, Beijing has made it clear that protesters in Hong Kong should stop playing with fire, and if they continue to cause trouble and clash with police, they will eventually be punished.
We would like to make a clear warning to the very small group of unscrupulous and violent criminals and the dirty forces behind them. Those who play with fire will perish by it.
The spokesman for China's top policy office in Hong Kong issued the warning on Tuesday during a news conference in Beijing. He called anti-China forces the behind-the-scene masterminds of violence in the city. However, he noted that some misled but well-intentioned citizens were caught in the middle of the unrest. The spokesman highlighted China's confidence that the Hong Kong government and police are fully capable of punishing violent criminals according to the law and restoring social order and stability. The comments out of Beijing came a day after Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam vowed to restore order after 9 weeks of nearly uninterrupted demonstrations. Speaking on Monday, Lam said Hong Kong was on the verge of a very dangerous situation. Toni Morrison, the first Black woman to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature, has died at the age of 88. Her family confirmed the author had died on Tuesday following a short illness. She won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1993 after 6 novels. She was nearly 40 when her first novel, Beloved, was published. The book was also made into a film starring Oprah Winfrey in 1998. In 2012, former U.S. President Barack Obama awarded her a Presidential Medal of Freedom. Deforestation in Brazil increased by almost 300% in July compared to the previous year. That's according to Brazil's National Institute for Space Research on Tuesday. Around 3,200 square kilometers of the Amazon rainforest was destroyed in July. That's an area 5 times bigger than the city of Seoul. It's also an 88% increase from the deforestation of the previous month. Brazil's president claims, though, the research is inaccurate and damaging to Brazil's image.
It is time now for our Life and Info segment, where we take a look at all the useful information out there that could potentially help you with your daily life and goings on. Today we're going to be checking out some changes that will take effect in South Korea's labor sector later this year. So this should come in helpful if you work in South Korea. I'm glad to say for more, we have our Yoon Jong-min joining us in this studio. Jong-min, good morning. And what kind of changes to the labor conditions for workers can we expect in South Korea for the remainder of this year?
Well, morning, Mark. Like you said, there are some changes that are taking place for companies and workers in South Korea in the second half of 2019. Well, so first, from July, more industries were included in the mandatory 52-hour maximum work week system. So 21 industries had been granted a 1-year grace period, but now all of them have to abide by the rule. So as you can see there, 21 industries, including broadcasters, financial services, bus service, accommodation, and postal service, now can't force workers to work excessive hours. But some are raising doubts about whether these industries can strictly observe the law due to their notoriously long work hours. If they violate the law first, they will be given a chance to fix the violation. If they don't take the heat, company owners could potentially face up to 2 years in prison or be fined by up to $17,000 US. The law now additionally affects more than 1,000 companies and over 1 million workers in those industries.
Okay, so I'm just working out the math in my head. 52-hour work week means if you work a 5-day work week, around 10 hours a day. Not much more than that. If you work 6 hours, 6 days a week, probably more like 8 or 9 per day. So it's good, and plus it's about getting the balance right between your life and your work, so you can spend time with your family instead of just working all the time. But this is really affecting a lot of companies. It's a new policy by the Moon Jae-in administration. We hope it works out. Are there any other changes we should be keeping an eye out for?
Well, sure, there are. From this October, more people who lost their jobs will get higher unemployment allowance. So according to this revised Employment Insurance Act, the allowance will be raised to 60% of the average wage from 50%. Also, the revision raises the payment period by 30 days. Now people can be paid by up to 270 days. That's around 9 months. Part-time workers who work fewer than 15 hours or 2 days a week used to be unable to receive the allowance when they lost their jobs, but now they can get benefits from the government if they have worked more than 180 days during past 2 years. Aside from that, from July, parental allowance is now given to freelance female workers and self-employed women if they have a baby.
Well, hopefully this can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, really. Hopefully raise South Korea's chronically low birth rate that doesn't seem to want to budge from around 1 per woman, and also give these working women a helping hand as well. So that would be nice. So also we have some good news for people who might be going through a bit of misery because of a co-worker or co-workers in the office because a new anti-bullying law, specifically in regards to companies, is coming into place. It's prohibiting any kind of bullying in companies.
Well, yes, you're right. A new law came into effect last month to prevent harassment in the workplace. So now company owners have the duty to prevent and stop bullying among workers because employees can officially file a complaint if they have experienced bullying. So, if workers incur physical or mental suffering to other employees using their superior status or power, they can be reported to company's owners. Once the case is reported, employers must immediately launch an investigation and take proper action, such as separating victims from perpetrators in the workplace. If they fail to follow the rule, they may face a prison term of up to 3 years or be fined by up to $25,000. But the law also has loopholes. If employers are the ones causing the problem, it would be difficult for employees to report the case to them.
Okay, well, maybe that is next in line for how they're going to reform the labor sector here
Probably,
in
yes.
South Korea, because you need to have a different route to go through if that's your kind of situation with your actual employer causing the problems there. And it's good to see that the South Korean government is really focusing hard on this, because a lot of critics would say that the country needed to be brought up to speed with the rest of the world in terms of protecting the people who work for a living and pay taxes. Jong-un, as always, it was a pleasure having you, and thank you for your report.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you.
Good morning. Typhoon Francisco has been downgraded to a tropical depression, but the storm did bring heavy showers to Korea's central region and Gangwon-do province. And parts of Gangwon-do province could see up to 100 millimeters through this evening, while southern inland regions are forecast to get passing showers in the afternoon. And about the heat, what a sizzling day we had here in the capital yesterday. But we will get relief from the heat today. But heat alerts are still in place for most western parts of the country and Jeju Island. And these heat alerts could expand to more areas as the day goes on. Jeju and Seoul will get up to 32 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and higher daily highs are expected for southern parts of the country today. We will still have heat for the next few days or so, but Thursday will already mark Ipchu, the beginning of autumn on East Asian calendars. And also the weather agency predicts we won't have any more major heat waves for the rest of the summer. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave the news and weather for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll have our next newscast at noon Korea time. That will be me again. So until then, goodbye.